Welcome to Friends and Fiction. 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories. Novelists Mary Kay Andrews, Kristen Harmel, Christy Woodson Harvey, and Patty Callahan Henry are 4 longtime friends with more than 70 published books between them. Together, they host Friends and Fiction, with author interviews and fascinating insider talk about publishing and writing, to highlight and support independent bookstores. They discuss the books they've written, the books they're reading now, and the art of storytelling. If you love books and you're curious about the writing world, you're in the right place.
Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. It means it is time for Opinion, the happiest hour on the internet. We are so excited to introduce you tonight to Chris Swann and John Hart. And I'm Christy Woodson Harvey.
And I'm Patty Callahan Henry.
I'm Mary Kay Andrews.
I'm Kristen Harmel.
And this is Friends and Fiction, 4 New York Times bestselling authors, endless stories to support independent bookstores. As I mentioned, our guests for the evening are Chris Swann and John Hart, both writers of heart-pounding thrillers with deeply felt characters and vivid settings. They will talk to us about making the move from other careers to writing, how they balance page-turning plots with vividly drawn characters, and where they find their inspiration.
And as you know, we continue to encourage you to support independent booksellers when and where you can. And one way to do that is to visit our own friendsandfictionbookshop.org page, where you can find Chris and John's latest books and books by the 4 of us and our past guests at a discount. And of course, at bookshop.org, a portion of each sale through the Friends and Fiction shop goes to support indie bookstores. And it also helps support this show. So if you enjoy watching, this is a great way to support our guests, independent bookstores, and of course, Friends and Fiction, all at the same time.
And speaking of supporting Friends and Fiction, have you heard that we are talking turkey with Butterball? They are partnering with us for November and December.
Hello.
We're very excited about this because it means not only do we get to slap Butterball logos on people left and right, but we get to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the famed Turkey Talk line all month long. Make sure to join us on our Talkin' Turkey with Butterball after show tonight. We will be talking about the history of the Turkey Talk line and talking about some of our favorite turkey recipes.
And we also want to remind you about our brand new Friends and Fiction reading journal in partnership with our favorite Oxford Exchange. And it makes the perfect gift, even if you're buying it for yourself. One for me, one for you,
That's
one
right.
for me, one for you. And for the first time, I am going to finally write down the books I'm reading and what I think, because you forget, you look and you say, oh my gosh, what did I can't. And then it'll be like a reading diary. Did y'all keep a diary when you were little?
Yes.
You know, it's the lock.
Sporadically.
I did.
The lock and key. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a little key and everything. Yeah. Anyway, with a beautiful blue linen cover and plenty of space to make all your reading goals come true, you should get yourself one.
Yes. And of course, we want to wish a very happy Hanukkah this week to all of you who celebrate. We love seeing your photos and all of the happy celebrations going on. So it's just such a great time of year. And we have to wish a very happy birthday to our amazing behind-the-scenes tech guru, Sean.
Happy
birthday, Sean.
No, it's not. I think it's tomorrow. It's not today.
Tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And we also want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to our managing director, our own Meg Walker, our podcast host and friend, Ron Block, and of course, Publishers Weekly for the beautiful feature about Friends and Fiction and this fabulous community. If you haven't read that story yet, or if you don't get Publishers Weekly, I can't imagine why everyone doesn't. It's featured it's on our Facebook page today, so check it out.
Okay, so now we want to introduce you to our main event, our wonderful guests, Chris Swann and John Hart.
Chris Swann is both a novelist and a high school English teacher. For his work, he has been a Townsend Prize finalist, longlisted for the Southern Book Prize, and twice been a finalist for Georgia Author of the Year Award.
That's awesome. Chris earned his PhD in creative writing from Georgia State University. He lives with his wife and 2 sons in Atlanta, where he is the English department chair at Holy Innocents Episcopal School. His new novel, A Fire in the Night, was released in September, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution included it on a list of the 10 must-read Southern books this fall.
Now let's talk about John Hart. He is the author of 6 New York Times bestsellers, including The King of Lies, Downriver, and The Last Child. His novels have been translated into 30 languages and can be found in over 70 countries. I get so intimidated when I read all these things that these people have done. He's won the Barry Award. I know. He won the Barry Award, the Southern Independent Booksellers Award for fiction, the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award, the Southern Book Prize, and the North Carolina Award for Literature. He's also the only author to ever win the Best Novel Edgar for 2 consecutive novels.
Wow.
A former defense attorney and stockbroker, John lives on a farm in Virginia, where he now writes full-time.
Amazing. All right, Sean, let's bring him on. It's like we're gonna have the graphic covering your faces all night. Thanks for coming. Good to see you guys.
Hello, ladies. This is so fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Can I just say what a wonderful group you are, and what a great thing you've put together with this podcast and this internet presence. I mean, 4 friends coming together to talk about what they love and what they do. It's really remarkable. And I think it's genius.
Thank you. Thanks so much for saying that.
Well, thank you for having us. I know Chris feels the same way, I'm sure.
Absolutely. I have no idea how y'all are able to do this. Families, and oh, by the way, write best-selling books at the same time.
Well,
doing something right. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Well, we're so excited to have you to talk about your incredibly exciting new books, A Fire in the Night and The Unwilling. So to kick us off, John, can you tell us a little bit about The Unwilling?
Yeah, so The Unwilling is it's a little bit different for me. I try to do something special in terms of a personal challenge with every book that I write. And let me put a little context on that. The Unwilling, for instance, is the first novel I've ever written that's set entirely in the past. So I've written novels before that may have had a flashback or two, but this novel is set entirely in Charlotte, North Carolina in 1972. So it's kind of a shadow of the Vietnam War story. It's not a war novel. It's not about the war. It's about the impact of the war. I like to write about small communities, which Charlotte was in 1972, believe it or not, and people that are impacted by bad deeds or violence, and how those ripples spread outwards. And so it was a real exciting decision, I guess, to just say, look, I want to do something I've never done before. I remember 1972 pretty clearly. I mean, I was 7, so that's before we start forgetting things. And I remember older kids that were afraid of going to Vietnam, and those who had lost siblings in Vietnam. And so I really wanted to try to capture the zeitgeist, and I actually kind of hate that word zeitgeist, but sometimes the zeitgeist of 1970s, the early 70s, what was going on in the country, what was going on in Vietnam, but wrap those around, kind of a typical John Hart crime novel about decent people caught up in horrible events. And just for the record, to kind of help you understand, I grew up just north of Charlotte, 30 or 40 miles away. Christy and I are from the same town. So to me, it was just like, I want to make this personal, and I want to dive back into those memories and try to deliver an experience that feels like 1972.
That's awesome.
It's an amazing book. All right, Chris, can you tell us a little bit about A Fire in the Night?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I will say, John, I read The Unwilling. It's fantastic. All y'all should go out and get a copy. Fire in the Night is the story of Nick Anthony, who is a professor of medieval studies, and he is mourning the loss of his wife, Ellie, from cancer the year before. And he's retreated to their mountain house in Casters, North Carolina, and just wants to wall out the world and be alone with his grief. This is a novel, so it doesn't stay that way for very long. He's interrupted by there's a sheriff's deputy shows up at his door because he has no phone because he's cut that off as well. And the deputy has sad news. His brother Jay and his brother Jay's wife have died in a house fire in Tampa. And they think it's an accident and they're still investigating. And oh, by the way, has Nick seen his niece? And Nick's his niece, he has no idea. He hasn't talked to his brother in 20 years. He has a 16-year-old niece named Annalise. She's missing. Guess who shows up on Nick's porch? Who has a slightly different story. That yes, her parents died, but it wasn't an accident. And she saw the people who set the fire and killed her parents. And she thinks they might be chasing her. And Nick, you find out, turns out to be a bit more than just a retired professor of medieval studies. I'm going to leave it at that.
I love it.
And I have to tell you, both of you, titles, we talk about titles a lot here. Your titles are amazing. The Unwilling, Fire in the Night. I wish those kind of titles just came to me like that. They're great.
They don't come. They don't come, Patty. You know that. I mean, you work with titles, man. I mean, titles are hard. Titles are like
so hard.
So hard.
I
had 3 novels where I knew the title on page 1, and I can name them. And every other novel has been a nightmare of hundreds of trials, and committee conversations. And I don't ever want to ever again pick a title by committee, but once you open that box, everybody's got an opinion, and then now it's politics, right? Titles are tough. Titles are really tough.
Then the words quit making sense. It's like you've talked about it so many times. You're like, I don't even know if I liked that one.
Wait, is there a night in the fire or a fire in the night?
Yeah.
So I think the Fire in the Night is great because it's evocative, it's relevant. What I would like to see in a title, and I've accomplished this on only a few books, is someone buys the book, reads the book, and understands in the last page or two what the title means.
Yeah,
and that's a hard thing to do. And I've only achieved it a few times. I wish I could do it with every book. We all do. Something that somebody closes that last page and says, "I get it. Wow, the title works."
Boom.
What a good title! Yeah, that's hard to do.
I just did that with a book I finished a draft on a couple of weeks ago that I'm working on right now. But otherwise, same. Trying to find a title that's evocative, that paints an image, maybe, or that just it seems to fit thematically somehow without being too intellectual or too
vague and flowery.
Exactly.
They're great titles.
Well, and you have to go for the. I mean, look, let's be honest. You have to try to find a commercial title. Publishers love that term, a commercial title that actually captures the essence of the novel and is meaningful to the reader. And so that's really the challenge. How do you capture the essence of the novel in a very few words, and do it in a manner that is going to sell the book? I mean, it's tough.
And doesn't sound like someone else's.
That's exactly true. And you're like, this sounds great. And there were 3 books last year with the same. No.
I read a book 2 years ago called The Grapes of Wrath, and they told me it was done. I was like, darn it.
My editor said, we want to call your next book No Way Home. And I said, that sounds great, but I'm a Marvel fan, and that's the title of the next Spider-Man movie.
Oh, yeah.
And so everyone's going to think, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's probably not a good idea. I'm like, that's true.
Okay, we got off on a title tangent. I remember when we first met, and we met because of your wife, Kathy. I was friends with Kathy, and we met, and you were finishing your first novel, and you were trying to find a way to publish it. And you asked me if I would read some of it. And I was like, oh, no, man. Like, I really like Kathy. And what am I going to say? And
because undoubtedly the book is terrible.
Why do you think I asked you, Patty? I was like, she can't say no.
She's beholden, And I read it. And within a couple of pages, I wrote back to both of you and was like, yes. And so here you are. And now, in addition to being a novelist, we are all fascinated. We talked about it off screen by the fact that you are also a high school English teacher. So, and you have a PhD in creative writing. So obviously literature is a passion of yours. Did you always know you wanted to do both of these things? And after you answer that, how in the living macaroni and cheese do you balance these two careers, teaching about writing and writing?
Well, for the second one, sleep is overrated. For the first, no, I knew I wanted to be a writer when I was 13. I had a social studies teacher who was frog marching us through the Revolutionary War, and said, we're going to have a project, boys and girls. And we all went, because it was going to be like a book report on Johnny Tremaine or a poster on how a musket worked. And I didn't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
And she said, no, I've got some new things this year. And one of them was to write a diary. And in parentheses said, or for the boys, a journal, because this was 1983. And not many guys were going to be like, yeah, diary. I'll write a diary. Journal sounds manly, like I hewed it out of wood or something.
Yeah.
You
like leather, you like killed an animal.
Right.
Yeah.
I carved it into stone with my hand. A journal from the point of view of a fictitious person who has witnessed or participated in some event in the Revolutionary War. And I said, I'm doing that. And my friends thought I was insane. And I'm like, I'm not doing the musket poster project because every kid in the room is going to do that. And she goes alphabetical. My last name's Swann. I'm not going to be the 9th guy. It's like, it's a musket. You pour the flask into the thing. Like, I'm not doing that. and I made up some Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett kind of frontier woodsman that didn't like this whole taxation without representation. And so he was going to grab his musket, which I knew at this point very well how they worked. And I'm going to go fight for the... And he participated. I had to do research. He was clever. We had to go do research, right?
Yeah.
I was like, did anything happen in the South in the Revolutionary War? Everything seems to have happened in Boston and New York. And yeah, there was a battle outside of Charlotte, Battle of Kings Mountain. And I researched that. And my guy was the hero who killed the British commander. And it was a whole lot of fun. And my classmates, my friends were like, this is pretty good, which for 13-year-old boys is high praise.
Yes, it is.
And I thought I could write. I was like, and I thought I could do this, but even at 13, I'm like, what do writers do?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think they just write a book and go, well, that's done. Now I want to go, hang out in Hilton Head, and maybe in a couple of years I'll write another book. Like,
wouldn't that be nice?
All might.
That's exactly what we do, right?
Every year.
Described our lives.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I thought, what do I do? And I looked in the back of the book, said that a lot of people teach, and I thought, okay, I'll do that.
Wow.
That was my entire career counsel. Like, everyone's like, what do you want to do when I'm like, I want to be a teacher and write books.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And I thought teaching would be a way to pay the rent. And I stumbled into a career that I love. And I've been very fortunate, and my school's been very, very kind and supportive of me. So
that's so cool.
Yeah, I'm lucky.
Yeah, you are lucky if you get to do what you love to do.
Yes.
And they throw some money at you.
Yeah, every once in a while. And I have my summers free, and it's when I get it's where I get a lot of my writing done.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
I get a head start and get a bunch done. Slows down in the fall, but I've got a headwind going, and it helps.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for both of you, Chris and John. I'm somebody who sort of writes a hybrid kind of a book, a mystery - women's fiction. And I'd love to hear from both of you your thoughts on what distinguishes a thriller from a mystery. Now, John, when you started, weren't you strictly categorized as mystery, or have I got that wrong?
I'm going to take 60 seconds, if I may, and just riff on something that Chris said, because like this hidden writer that comes out in unexpected ways is something that I've seen in a lot of novelists that I've met over the years. Yeah. I was in law school. I'll never forget it. And I was taking a class, fascinatingly called legal research. And it's about basically how a law library works. I mean, that's really good stuff. So I had the assignment, there were like 50 of us. Here is the legal issue you have to research. Write a 5-page paper on how you go into the library and find the answers to this legal issue. It has to be the honestly most dry writing assignment in all of God's good earth. Like, how do you find issues in the law library to resolve this one particular question? So I wrote what turned out to be a 12-page story about all these first-year law students that basically went Hunger Games and started, killing each other and stealing volumes and hiding volumes. And it was a whole great thing. And the librarian was so overwhelmed by it. She asked me, could she preserve it under glass for future law students? I was like, yes, of course.
Sure.
Preserve it under glass. I'm sorry, I have farm allergies. But my point is, like Chris is talking about discovering when writing is a release and a satisfying thing. I mean, I had so much fun writing a paper that everybody else in my law school hated writing. So I'm sorry about that segue.
No, that's
a
good.
great story.
Well, I mean, but it's the truth, right? I mean, all of us that are writers come to it in a different way. And I think that some of it is because we're unhappy with our lives. I mean, I wrote my first novel when I was studying for a master's in accounting at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Okay, don't ask me why I'm there, but I was so unhappy. I would spend 10, 12 hours a day trying to understand this man-made science of accounting that I would stay up from midnight until 3 a.m. writing fiction to escape. And I did the same thing in law school. And I suspect all of you have the same story, right? I mean, it comes out in these unexpected, shocking, wonderful ways. How do we find our ways to being writers? So anyway, I listened to Chris talk about being 13 and writing, this story. I'm like, gosh, I mean, I suspect we all have those moments, right? I mean, we all have those times in our life. And now I've forgotten what your question is, Mary.
Okay, well, I'll go back. So I would love to hear from both of you, your thoughts on what distinguishes a thriller from a mystery.
Okay, fair question.
Also,
John, you go first with that.
Also, how do you put the thrill in thriller? I want to know that. I need to know that.
That's like, how do you put, how do you put the hot sauce? I mean, that's tough. So the difference between thrillers and mysteries is not something I understood when I started. And I suspect
you were a mystery writer to start with, right?
I didn't set out to be. I wanted to tell a story. I mean, and I never know what the plot's going to be. I never know what the twists are going to be. I always start with a character and some emotional drivers that are going to spin them through the story, and they will evolve, right? So I think we can all agree, here's what readers should deserve, and what they demand is at least two things in a good novel. There's the plot arc that pulls them through the pages, but then there's a significant character growth of at least 1, 2, or 3 of the main characters, so that the people they see at the end of the story are not the same that they met on page 1 or 20, because that's the personal involvement. Like I'm watching these people, I'm living their lives, I'm seeing them grow, and I'm engaged. So I've never had a plot-driven beginning to a novel. I always start with the characters. So when those early books you were talking about, when I was sort of classified as a mystery writer, it wasn't intentional. I had characters whose story I wanted to tell, and I knew what their emotional drivers were. Shame, guilt, rage, fear, loss, whatever was at the core of their being and made them so damaged, they would have to confront as the story evolved, right? And so I just started writing a story. Seriously, it was that simple. I had a general idea of what I wanted it to feel like, and a general idea if I wanted these characters made whole or left broken or in prison or free or whatever. But it was all about how they evolved and the story that I needed to tell to evolve them, right? So sometimes that turns out to be a mystery. Sometimes it turns out to be a thriller. I mean, in The Hush, it was kind of a supernatural thriller. I didn't really see that coming. I didn't set out to do that. I'm a grope and hope guy, and you guys could probably understand this. There are two kinds of novelists. There are the outliners, which I think are the really smart ones, but maybe intellectually smart, but imaginatively struggling. And then there are the grope and hopers, and the grope and hopers just say, damn, I'm going to get up every day and I'm going to sit at the keyboard and something's going to come and I'm going to figure it out as I go. And that's what I do. So maybe it's a mystery, maybe it's a thriller, maybe it's a family drama or Southern Gothic, or all of those things. I don't really know. I only know that a book works when I get to the end of it and the characters that I've built have reached some sort of evolution and conclusion where they're no longer the same. They've been changed by whatever bad things, and there are bad things. I mean, let's be honest, that's part of it. But who are they at the end of it, and how do they respond to these bad things, and is their life intact or destroyed? But the short answer to your question is, I think mystery is about, who done it, and thrillers are about, why done it or how done it. or how is it going to end? I mean, I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it, but it's for me, it's the whole damn thing's a mystery. I mean, I don't know how it works. I don't know where that just come from. I just start typing, and sometimes I erase 30 pages or a whole novel, and sometimes it's just like a day at Disney. It's crazy.
I mean, I think most really good stories have got some kind of element of mystery at the very least.
Yeah.
What's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Right? Is Hamlet going to get off his butt and take care of his uncle? Is Jane Eyre going to pick Mr. Rochester or St. John Rivers, or say, I don't need a man, or what's going to happen next? I heard a definite, like, mystery, suspense, thriller, they all blend, but a catchy definition I heard once was: a mystery is about what happened in the past. A thriller is about what's happening right now. And the suspense is what is about to happen. And that's simplistic, but it works. It fits.
Yeah.
And
I like that.
They do blend together. I think that, and if you're writing, I always like stories where things happen, and usually they don't always involve a man with a gun or a woman with a gun, but that can be convenient. They don't always involve violence or tragedy, but those work. And I have a PhD in creative writing. I've been to lots of programs in creative writing, and I've heard all the criticisms of them. And one that I hear a lot is that people with creative writing degrees can write really beautifully about not very much. And that's not fair, and it's not really true, but there's a tiny bit of truth to it, in that you often get taught how to write a really pretty sentence. But if you're going to write anything that approaches genre, like it's almost like that's embarrassing. And again, this is a broad generalization. But I remember having a classmate of mine was writing and said one day, like, I just kind of in workshop, she's like, God, I just got to get my characters off the couch. And I started laughing, and she didn't. She was being lit. She's like, had these characters, but they were just talking. They weren't doing anything. And I like stories where maybe it's my inner 12-year-old. I want something to blow up, or I want something.
You want that musket. You want that musket. Right?
Yeah, the musket.
With a mystery, though, I found you were talking, John, about plotting and sort of like outlining or not. And I've heard plotters or pantsers, the other way to put it. And I found in my first novel, which had a mystery component to it, a boy vanishes and no one knows what happened to him. I didn't know what happened to him. I thought, I'll figure it out as I'm writing.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a terrible way to write it, because I kind of need to know. And so I figured it, because you either get bad mysteries, you either get the butler did it. How surprising. I put that on page 50. I read the next 300 pages in the vain hope that something interesting would happen. Thank you for ruining my weekend. Or you get aliens took him. That's what?
Yeah.
Random. Right? So you try to steer clear of those two. And I found that if I outline stuff way too much, I leave too clear of a trail. I'm afraid I want to leave too clear of a trail for a reader who'll be like, oh, that's what happened.
Yep.
You want to get to the end of a good mystery and be like, I didn't see that coming. But that makes
because we didn't see it coming. Yeah.
Well, you see it right before it happens and you're all right. Yeah.
My friend Margaret Marin, and I know, John, you knew Margaret.
I loved her. She was great.
Yeah. Margaret we were in a writing group together, and Margaret used to say, I don't want to know what happens next, because then I'll be bored.
Yeah. It's true.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Gosh, I wish I could write that way. I write historical fiction, and I think I'm so concerned with hitting the right dates of things that happened in the war. Like, I think I maybe outlined too much, and it does take away some of the joy in the process for me. So that's very interesting to hear.
But it takes away it does away with the anxiety that I feel every time.
Me too.
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, my timeline's completely wrong.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, I'm not saying my timeline always turns out correctly, just that I have kind of the roadmap to go with. Okay, so both of you address plenty of social issues in your novels, from police corruption to the treatment of America's veterans. And in addition to creating these fast-moving plots, like we were just talking about, and these page-turning stories, you both incorporate so much heart and so much emotion into your novels. So I'm wondering, has an issue that you were facing or that the world was facing ever compelled you to sit down and write a novel? Or do the issues find their way in as a part of a story where you've kind of met the characters first? I guess I'm sort of wondering which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Chris, do you want to start?
I'm kind of like John. I always like to start with character. Maybe there's a situation. I don't have a plot yet. I have an idea of a kind of story, but it's always with a character. And then as the character grows and I get to know the character and can convey that person on the page and try to get you to care about them, because to be honest, there's not that many plots in the world, but every person is unique. And so if I can get you to connect with a character and you care, you'll follow them through, whether it's a romance, a mystery, science fiction, whatever. I tend to do that first. And then oftentimes issues that I care about or that I think are important, or I think, oh, this would fit really well, or maybe not even think about it consciously. They just sort of appear. I don't tend to sit down and say, I am now going to write a novel that is going to address X crisis. I like to trying to think about the history of the character and the relationships with other characters. And just like in my own life, your relationships with other people and your exposure to other people, you become aware of certain things, social issues, whether it's homophobia or racism or, what America has been like, post 9/11, or how society has changed. A big thing I think a lot of us are wrestling with is, okay, now we're in a pandemic, and how do we incorporate that into our book?
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all have wrestled with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all did we all wrestled with it last year.
Yeah. Do you ignore it? That's sort of what I did with this one. Do you incorporate it somehow? Do you someone out there's writing the great pandemic novel or the great COVID novel? It's not going to be me. But
apparently Jodi Picoult has done it though. So good on her.
Yeah,
that's right.
I heard she mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, John? Do you generally start with an issue, or do you start with the characters and the issues kind of appear?
So I'm going to say character first and then the issues appear. But I want to say one thing about something Chris said earlier. We're talking about genre writing and why it works, why it matters, why people respond to it. And then I'll come back to this question if I ever brought any of the modern tumult of our lives into the books intentionally. Here's what I love about crime fiction, mystery, thriller, pick your term. People get real when stakes are high. I like to describe it as, turning up the heat on a very bland looking person and cooking off all of the soft bits that they show to the world, and then revealing what's underneath, right? And I think it was Jocelyn Jackson that said this, and I steal this quote, and I'm sure I butcher it too, but years ago I read this, and she said that the best way to introduce your readers to the characters you've built, to the people you've made, is to put all of those characters in a room, lock the door, and light one of them on fire. And I think that's really astute, because somebody's going to beat their fist bloody on the door, somebody's going to panic and freeze, and somebody hopefully is going to try to put out the fire. But you don't know until someone is actually burning what's going to happen. And so I love crime fiction because you can take these relatively sedate lives and subject them to this kind of heat that cooks away those soft bits, and we can really explore what are people going to do when the stakes are real. I mean, if it's life or death, freedom or prison, family, living or dying. And that is very, very real. I mean, and people respond to that because we can all imagine it. And hopefully we're tucked into safe lives with well-adjusted people. But, it's always a question. What would happen? What would I do? How would I handle that situation? And so, genre fiction is undersold in its ability to explore what humanity will do when the chips get really down. And
absolutely.
And that's what I like writing about. So I'm accused often of writing dark, bring my quotes in, dark fiction, but I don't really write dark. I write about the search for light in dark places. I like to take good people and put them into these terrible circumstances for this reason. The things that make humanity great are not what we see on the headlines. They're the things that we all do in our daily lives, all the good people in the world do in our daily lives that nobody notices. You know, we put someone before ourselves. We sacrifice for a sibling, or we give to a stranger on the street. I mean, pick whatever it is. These are tiny little flashes of humanity that disappear in a bright, happy world. But if you take that world and make it really dim and dark, those little flashes pop, right? I mean, you see these characters that choose, do I put myself above my mother or my sister, or do I, screw my neighbor or help my neighbor? I mean, it's a really great opportunity to explore those things. So that's what I think genre fiction allows us to do in a really meaningful way, without the navel gazing that Chris is talking about with some of the literary works. Like, I don't want to read 3 pages of how the light is touching the dish towel in the kitchen. I don't give a fig. I don't care.
Macaroni.
There's my dish towel scene.
Yeah. Nick,
that's now out.
Professional advice. So, like, I love when things happen, but the stakes are real, and it allows us to explore humanity. So, in terms of the broader question of, obviously what happens in the real world affects us all. I mean, we're sponges. Writers are sponges. I mean, we absorb and we process. And we think about, what does this do? And it comes in our dreams, and it comes when we don't expect it. That's what we do. That's what we're paid to do. The most important example I can think of where I actively chose to do it was in a novel that came out in 2016 called Redemption Road. And it was after all of the really horrible things in Ferguson and Boston and, some of these cop shootings. And what bothered me, see, I was a criminal defense attorney for years, and for me, that means you wait for the facts and you judge on the facts. And whether the cop is wrong or the person who got shot is wrong, that's irrelevant until the facts are known. And yet the entire country raced to this judgment. And pick your side. If you think cops are corrupt, they murdered an innocent kid. If you think that cops are on the good side, they are being vilified for doing their job. I mean, you can look at this 1,000 different ways. The point is, nobody should be making decisions, let alone on the national stage, until the facts are known. Facts are facts, and facts matter. And as a defense attorney, it just galls me when I see people jump to conclusions on either side of the political spectrum. So I wrote a scene in Redemption Road where some bad things happen in the basement of an abandoned house, where a young white teenage female was abducted, and the 2 black suspects who abducted her were killed, ostensibly by the cop first on the scene. The reason I wrote this scene the way I did is because what everybody thinks happened in that scene is exactly wrong. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on. If you think one thing or the other and you go to that, you're wrong. Nobody knows until the end of the book what really happened in that basement. And so that was a very conscious decision on my part to say, you know what? It matters what actually happened, and you need to wait to know what happened. And I just wish that we had a little bit more patience in all things, to just be chill. And that seems really doubly charged now. I mean, it's just, the world gets crazier every year. But when I wrote it, it seemed very straightforward. It was a very simple message. Facts matter, period.
Yeah. That's great.
Writing crime helps with that, because you cut through when there's a crime is committed. It's like a violation, and it can affect anybody at any time, from any socioeconomic background, racial, ethnic, what have you. And you can use crime, whether it's abduction, whether it's murder, whether it's somebody goes missing, what have you, as a way to explore things. Because people, when there's a crime committed, people ask questions, and you open doors that maybe you shouldn't have opened, or that were meant to be closed, and you discover things. And that's a great way to, even Charles Dickens did that. He was one of the most popular writers ever, and he would often write about characters who would go through the shadowy underbelly of London, and you would discover things about the character, but he was also writing about, hey, here's part of society too. Here's something we need to deal with. So it's at the same time, without making it a sermon. You make it part of your story.
That's a real. I'm sorry to interrupt. That's a really great point. I mean, it should and could and almost always is some sort of, I don't want to say an indictment of society, but an exploration of society. I mean, because people want the journey. They want to see places they've never been. Maybe that means, 1825 South Africa, or maybe it means, the London Underbelly in 1910, or maybe it means what's going on in your next door neighborhood right now. I mean, but people want to experience things that they've never experienced. It's funny, my first couple books became huge hits in Denmark. And I never understood why. And my publisher said it's because the Danes have an abiding fascination with the American South. Who knew? I didn't write for the Danes. But apparently it's like, ooh, the American South. That's kind of fascinating. Let's see what's going on there.
Well, that's the perfect segue into my question, actually.
About Danish foreign right. Okay.
Well, look, he may be smart, but he was pretty compelling when he told me.
Well, it's a perfect segue into my next question because, as John said, and probably a lot of the viewers don't know, we actually grew up in the same small southern town of Salisbury, North Carolina, and then just found out that Chris grew up like 15 miles down the road, which is really bizarre. We must have all been bored in the Piedmont and it sparked our imagination or something. It's pretty amazing. But I think, both of you, or maybe I will not speak for you, but I guess my question would be, do you think that, small town Southern upbringing influenced your writing, or do you work your background into your stories? Do you see that happening? Chris, do you want to?
Sure. I moved around a lot, but small towns up until we moved to Atlanta when I was 18. And I still remember driving into Atlanta for the first time, and I had tried. I wasn't like, golly, there are big buildings here. I mean, like I had been in planes and I'd been to Europe. I'd traveled and stuff. I remember driving in thinking this is an entirely different experience. I think so. I think smaller towns, when you get a sense of community and people, and sometimes you're like, I wish I didn't know everybody, and I wish everybody didn't know everything about me. They're a real boon for writers because they're in a large place like Atlanta, which is where I set some of my fiction, and I like doing that. But there's something about having a smaller, isolated community where people do know each other. And people can either help or hurt each other fairly easily, depending on the kind of story you're writing. I think that, and I think maybe the sense of wanting to, not wanting to just stay in a small plate, but also go out and explore the world and see that. I think that maybe that might have sparked our imagination. I know, Christy, you were kind of joking about it. Maybe we were all bored in the Piedmont, but fired our imaginations. Maybe there's a little bit something to that. Wanting to see what else is out there, wanting to see and imagining a world that's different from where we are. I think most people can do that, but I think if you're from a smaller area, then that's more likely to happen. I don't know. John, what do you think?
So here's what I love about small towns from a writer's perspective. And I've said this so many times. It's so true. People know your business, think they know your business, or think they have the right to know your business. And it makes it so fascinating because it takes motivations and backstories and questions and mysteries and all these to a whole different level, right? I mean, it can go back generations, especially in a small southern town. Like my parents, I lost my mother recently, but she lived in a house that was built in 1872. And adjacent to her was a house that the same family had lived in since it was built in the 1850s. The parlor still had the original wallpaper. And they wouldn't allow it to be taken down. Same family in this house, antebellum, same original wallpaper. And, the thing about small town South, and this is what I love about it. If you think about the difference between the South and the North in the, formative years, the Northerners, they're battling the elements, and they're shut up in their houses with their fires, and they're separated, and good fences make good neighbors. And I lived in New England. I know that that's true. People believe
Robert
it.
Frost quote.
But in the South, you're sitting on your porch, you're waiting for that breeze, and how long can you ignore the people that walk by or sitting next to you? And so there's this real sense of, I know you. Yeah. And if I don't know you, I'm going to know you. I don't know. For me, it's just so rich. And you combine that with the fact that in these small Southern towns, because of the history of slavery and all these other things, most of these towns have a very clear division between haves and have-nots.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like, you can have a beautiful antebellum mansion that people from out of state would pay $1 gajillion for. And then if you go a block behind it, there's acres and acres filled with these small, really poor houses that were probably built on the foundations of slave quarters. I mean, but they're right there. I mean, it's like right there, like the richest people in these very wealthy Southern towns can be right next to these very poor neighborhoods. And I think it's fascinating, man. And I love to explore these ideas because I'm not a political thinker at all. I mean, I have my own opinions and I like to follow it, but I love the idea that people believe that if you have money, you have value, and if you have no money, you don't. And so a lot of my stories will involve these turns of circumstances where the one that everybody thinks has got to be right because he's from the good family on the right side of the tracks is actually the a-hole, and it's the guy that nobody ever saw coming, who really has got it going on. And I don't make that a shtick. I don't want it to ever be a shtick, but it's just an exploration of what the expectations are in small towns and how we carry the past into the present and what it's going to look like going forward. I mean, it's rich soil for those of us that do what we do. It's rich soil.
Totally. Yeah.
I didn't grow up in a small town, and I've written about it.
Patty, dang it. I'm sorry.
I blew it.
Yeah. How did you get to be a writer?
I grew up in Philadelphia and Fort Lauderdale. So, but I write about it because y'all complain sometimes, everybody's in everybody's business. And I just think I love to read about it. I love to imagine that I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just love it. I don't know why. Like, I think that makes me weird. And like, even growing up, people would be like, I'm never coming back here. And I'd always be like, I cannot wait to come back here. I didn't. The irony is that like 2/3 of the people that were like, well, I cannot wait to get out of here are like living back home, and I'm not. And I always wanted to move home. So, what happened there. But
I hear the Salisbury in you, Christy. I hear it in your voice.
I know. I mean,
I would tell you what, Atlanta is
from Salisbury.
Yeah,
Atlanta's
we have our own
version of a small town. You go a mile away from here, and I live in a nice suburb in Atlanta near Chastain Park, and you go a couple miles due south of here, and you are in what I know in the 90s and early 2000s was basically an open air heroin market. Yeah. And it's right down, literally, like, not very far. Again, it's a city-sized version of the small town dynamics, John, that you were talking about, and it's just a slightly bigger canvas.
Yeah. I can remember when I started writing mysteries. I was intimidated by the size of Atlanta. How can I write about Atlanta? I wanted to set a book here, and then finally I thought, you know what? Atlanta isn't one big city. Yeah. It's little neighborhoods, right? So it's Chastain Park, and it's Decatur, and it's West Side, and it's
Avondale,
Alpharetta, and it's the airport. And so once I needed a piece of it that I could get my hands around. And once I did that, then I could understand it, and then I could put my characters in it, and then they could do what they needed to do.
Yeah. Okay, Chris and John, both of y'all, I feel like in many ways tonight you've given us a masterclass in writing and plotting. I feel like I wanted to take notes, but I can't look at the screen and take notes at the same time. So, but I want to narrow it down to a writing tip. If you all will please each give us one of your favorite writing tips. Chris, you want to start us off?
Sure. And this is more, there are all kinds of things you can learn about technique and about how to draw characters. And write really compelling settings without going on for 3 pages about the sunlight hitting the tea towel.
I'm going to do that tomorrow.
I can narrow that down to half a page.
Then I'm going to send it to John. That's what I'm going to do.
Exactly.
I will tell you, if in terms of writing, the only reason I am a published writer, literally the only reason, is that I didn't quit. I wanted to do this since I was 13. And I don't know if you can tell by looking at me, but 13 was a while ago. And there were all sorts of times when I could have, I found a career I love. I am married to the love of my life. I have 2 boys. I have a dog, a nice house. Like, life is good. And I could just, I have a gracious plenty. That's fine. This writing thing, I tried it and it didn't work. There were so many times I could have quit. Yeah. If you have anybody who is not a best friend or a blood relation who reads something that you've written and says something positive about it, right? If you have that, don't quit. Because if you quit, nothing will happen. I can't guarantee something will, but the only reason I'm published is because I was persistent. It's one of the few things I'm really, really stubborn about. And it worked. It took longer than I'd like, and I wasn't consistent about it. But, don't give up, because so many people who could write go, you know what, I tried and it didn't work, and I'm done. And that is the only reason I'm here, is because I stuck with it. And I had along the way, I had enough people and enough times, strangers, friends, what have you, who gave me enough encouragement. I got a line from an editor saying, not for me, but send me something else if you get it. Things like that. Right. Don't quit. That's not deep, and it's not original, but
no, it's great.
It's probably the most important thing. Yeah.
Chris, your students are really lucky. I've just been thinking that all night as you talk. Like how but really, how wonderful to have a teacher.
They really are, aren't they?
I had great teachers in high school, but
I'm the lucky one.
It's awesome. Good for them to have the exposure to somebody like you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
All right. How about you, John?
Well, I think Chris is onto something. So let's talk about embracing the lifestyle of writer more than show don't tell. I mean, we can all buy the books that tell us how to avoid the common pitfalls. All right. So Chris is talking about finding someone other than your spouse or significant other, whatever, that can actually read your books and say nice things and taking that seriously. I would refine that based on my own experiences and say that the most important thing is to find someone that can deliver critical perspective in a manner that you will trust and not breaking your heart at the same time, because there is no more insecure creature than an unpublished writer. I think I'm safe in saying that. I mean, it's we're all putting our heart and soul onto the page, and we're waiting for someone, to anoint us and say you're worthy and come into the club. And that's a hit or miss thing, right? I mean, it's, sometimes it's just a bad day for the right editor or the wrong day for the wrong editor, who knows? But I'm blessed with my wife. She is capable of reading what I write in its rawest form and saying, you're losing me, or this is awesome. And if she says one or the other, I mean, I take it as gospel. So it's really important to have that. But keep in mind too, though, that you have to be careful about how you open yourself to opinions. Yes. Because we are all such insecure creatures. We are vulnerable. I mean, it's just like you pull your chest open and you say, here's my heart. What do you think about it? I mean, that is a terrifying thing. Yes. And there are people that will submarine you for their own reasons. Yep. And I'll never forget it. When I wrote 2 failed novels before my first was published. And when I decided to write the one that got published, I quit my law practice, and I had a stay-at-home wife and a brand new baby. And I told everybody in this little small town we were talking about that this is what I was doing. And the reason I did that was because I'm just a forthright, honest SOB, but secondly, because I knew that I would be held accountable. If I said I'm quitting my law practice with these stay-at-home dependents, I'm going to finish a book. I mean, I've got to finish a book. And I showed up at the library every day and I wrote the damn book. Yeah. But people would accost me. I mean, literally accost me, put their finger in my chest. I'm talking about surgeons and district attorneys and saying, who the hell do you think you are?
Wow.
Think you're next on Grisham? I would love to quit my job and fix my life. What makes you so special? And my response to them was like, I'm willing to roll the dice. And so I think that the naysayers, they naysay for their own reasons.
Yes.
And you need to understand that. The naysayers that, and look, my mother, God rest her soul, was one of them. She said, do not quit your day job. You will never get published.
Oh, wow.
She was saying that as a she was trying to protect me.
Sure. Yeah.
Difficult industry. But the people that are really just eager to tell you can never do it are the ones that have given up on their own dreams and moved on. And now they're wondering if that was a mistake or the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And if you fail, if you walk away, they're right. And if you succeed, they're wrong. So they have an vested interest. You got to understand, in the early days, you are your own best cheerleader, your own best friend. And if you do not care with the kind of passion that Chris is talking about, like you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to see it. If you don't have that, don't waste your time. But if you have that, I don't know how many times it took Chris, but I wrote 2 full novels before I got published. Wow. And after 2 Edgars and a few bestsellers, I wrote another one that I had to throw away before I went back and wrote my 5th best-selling novel. It's not a given.
No,
it's a constant struggle, and you just got to love it. That's it.
Yep. Yep.
So true. Well, Chris and John, if you wouldn't mind sticking around for just a few minutes, we have one additional question for you, but we have a couple of announcements first.
All right, y'all. A quick reminder about our Writer's Block podcasts. We'll always post links under announcements each time a new one goes out. A new episode launches every single Friday. And this past week, Ron talked to Kim Ritchie and Gretchen Peters about songwriting as storytelling. And y'all, I listened to it and it is so fascinating. And part 2 is coming up in a couple weeks, but these are 2 of the most award-winning songwriters in Nashville. And it was amazing. And then this coming week, Ron and I both talked to Kimmery Martin about medical fiction.
It's awesome. That podcast is so great. It's such a cool thing to be involved in. Speaking of cool things to be involved in, if you are not hanging out with us yet in the Friends and Fiction Official Book Club, you are missing out. You guys, they are at 9.9 thousand members. They are almost at 10,000. Lisa Harrison and Brenda Gardner are just doing an amazing job. I talked to them right before the show. They're working so hard. They're doing such great things. And this Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, they're going to have Ron Block on for their special happy hour. And they're going to be revealing their January, February, and March 2022 book picks. And they will have book recommendations galore for you. So join them this Friday. Join the group. They're just fabulous. We love them.
Yeah, and make sure, since we're making you put things on your calendar, make sure you join us next Wednesday, right here at 7. We're going to host Cynthia Dupree. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Cynthia Dupree
Sweeney, author of Good Company. Then in 2 weeks, join us as we welcome Maria Amparo Escandon of LA Weather, which I read and is fabulous. And if you're ever wondering about our schedule, it's always on the Friends and Fiction website. And the fall schedule, soon to be winter, is on our Facebook banner.
And I know we talked about it at the front end, but don't forget about the amazing reading journals. And at Oxford Exchange, you can have an entire Christmas bundle with our 3 Christmas books and a journal. We love sharing the love for all our fellow authors with new releases every Tuesday. So we want to give a shout out to Anissa Armstrong for all her time and energy with our launch day love every single Tuesday on the Facebook page.
It's a lot going on. Okay, Chris and John, you are up. We have one last question we want to ask you, and quickly because we're running out of time, but what were the values around reading and writing when you were growing up? John, do you want to start us?
My earliest memory of long fiction was from my father, who was the old school doctor, training at Duke and working 40 hours on and coming home for 8 hours. And in those 8 hours, he would find 10 minutes to come down when I was 7 years old and read to me my first chapter book. And that was formative. And I can remember being 8, 10, 12, 15, staying up until 2, 3 in the morning because I couldn't put down a book. So start early. It's a gift. And I think we all agree with that, especially in this day of just like, clickbait, eye porn. I mean, it's just like TikTok's not the same. I mean, it's all about imagination and deep involvement. And if it comes early, it sticks. That's it.
I love that.
Yeah. Always had a book. My mother would say I learned how to read before I learned how to walk. She's not telling the truth, but she's my mom. She can get away with that.
Yeah.
My grandfather was an English teacher before he ran a shop for 50 years in Cashiers, North Carolina. And he always had wonderful stories and told me about books. And I've loved to read ever since I was a little kid and was always encouraged to. And, I try to do the same with my own children. So
that's awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, John, thank you so much for being such incredible guests. We had so much fun with y'all. We learned a lot, and we know our viewers had a great time too. So thank you, and happy holidays. And we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you all. That was amazing. Thank you.
Happy holidays to all y'all.
You too, Chris.
Now, everybody, don't go anywhere. Stay right here for our Talkin' Turkey with Butterball after show. And don't forget that you can find all of our back episodes on YouTube. We are live there every week, just like we are on Facebook. And if you subscribe, you won't miss a thing. Plus, you'll have access to special short clips that you're going to love. Be sure to come back next week, same time, same place, as we welcome Cynthia I just lost her name, Dupree Sweeney.
Thank you for tuning in. You can join us every week on Facebook or YouTube, where our live show airs on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Also, subscribe to our podcast and follow us on Instagram. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome to the Talkin' Turkey Butterball After Show, where talking turkey doesn't just mean food. I have Patty read the Butterball. You just got off the Peloton, so I know it's not you.
No, it's me.
Sean's making us all the Butterball. That's very politically correct, Sean. Thank you. Well, ladies, what a show. Oh my goodness. I feel like we got
Oh my
gosh, right?
Oh, great.
Incredible. Yeah.
I could have talked to them for 2 hours. Their stories and their advice and the way they look at mysteries. What do you think, Mary Kay, about is that the way that you see mystery too? Was that like, did that ring true?
I loved the thing about what's happening and what's about to happen and what's gonna happen. I've never heard that distinction before. So that was really great.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a really great show. I'd never heard that either. And I was really fascinated by that. And even like doing this tonight, I was like, okay, like, do I classify them as thriller writers? And I feel like classification of books right now is like kind of this like hot topic. And I'm like, is that right? And is somebody gonna be mad if you say the wrong thing? It's really funny how
when their press kits say they write thrillers, then we can say they write thrillers.
Yeah.
But Christy, it made me think too, like we all talk about how to what is considered historical and what isn't. Yeah. And he said it was set in 1972, and I've heard that time period being called historical. So I feel like this whole idea of how do we put it in these little, it's a thriller, but it's historical, but it's a mystery, but
right.
Yep. Good point. So interesting.
Well,
they were great guests.
Fantastic. And both so interesting. Yeah. With their backstories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just can't believe
they both wrote stories when they were like as a school project. They both wrote a story instead of just doing the project.
I just didn't have that like moment. Like I don't ever remember. I mean, I always like to write, but I don't remember having like this moment of like, oh, I mean, not until I was like, 25 or something. So anyway, that's interesting. But okay, we have to talk about, we're here to talk turkey. Mm-hmm. And last week was, the big turkey day. So I loved all your photos and watching you cook and our group text and all of that. So how did it go? And bigger question, who spatchcocked their turkey?
I'll let the spatchcocker go first.
What?
I'll let the spatchcocker go first. That would be you.
We're officially addressing you that way from now on, the spatchcocker.
I did not spatchcock the turkey. Tom spatchcocked the turkey.
There's Tom.
There he is. There he is.
We consider you as one.
No, we are not one.
You were a spatchcock enabler. We'll say that. Yeah.
You know,
You're a spatchcock spouse.
Spatchcock spouse. I love it.
Yeah, he watched the Vivian Howard episode and he's like, well, I can do that.
That's awesome.
I mean, he's a fisherman, and so he knows how to, he cleans fish and he does the meat in our family. He brings the meat. That doesn't sound good. Forget I said that.
That can go bad really quick.
Wow, that went wrong right fast. Okay, over to you, Peach. Over to you, Peach.
Oh my gosh.
I'm shoving the spatchcock over to you.
We did not spatchcock the turkey, but it was amazing. We had 16 family members, which sounds overwhelming, but it was a really special time. So we went to the mountains. We did it different this year. We've never done that. Went and rented a couple of houses and had fires all the time and hiked and ate and ate and ate. And I might start fasting tomorrow. I'm not sure. How about you guys?
Kristen, what about you?
We went down and spent Thanksgiving with my in-laws in Fort Lauderdale. So we did not have fires because that would have been a poor idea.
Melted.
In Fort Lauderdale, we would have melted.
Not a good idea.
It was great. We did
She
a turkey.
ran.
Well, I walked. Let's be clear. I don't want Melissa
right.
chasing me.
He did a turkey
So
trot.
bad.
I didn't.
betrayed us.
I would have betrayed you if I had run. Jason betrayed you because my husband Jason, full of betrayal because not only did he run, but he came in third in his age group. So he ran fast, which I look at as a betrayal too. Totally inexcusable.
Okay, so Chris Swann just said he's putting spatchcock in his next book.
Okay, I can't wait to see
I have
that.
to say, I claim that one. I have already used spatchcock in a book. I didn't even realize it was that big of a and I got so many emails asking for how to spatchcock a chicken, and I had to have Will write it up. I just thought it was I don't cook, so I just thought it was a thing that everyone did, and you would always spatchcock the chicken, and I was like, oh, that's a thing, and I wrote about it, and people were like, I need this recipe. It was hilarious.
Okay, finish, Kristen. I'm sorry. They just
no, not at all. There wasn't that much more to say. Just we walked the turkey trot. It was great. We pulled Noah in a wagon. I had a little headband that had turkeys on it, so I would have been like the poster child for Butterball, except that the headband blew off in the first 3 minutes and landed in a gutter. So then I just had a soggy headband, which was not good. But I did complete an entire 5K on Thanksgiving morning and then stuffed my face accordingly afterwards. So
that's good.
Yep.
I mean, I'm impressed with that, really very impressed. And little Will was super jealous. I was like, oh my gosh, Kristen is doing this turkey trot. And Will was like, I want to go do a turkey trot. And I was like, don't look out the window because I'm sure they're coming by the door right now. Don't no one look and tell him that he could be running right now. No, I mean, I think that's awesome. I really do. We had both families, my family and Will's family, which was really, really fun. And we do that every year. It's kind of become a tradition, and it's great. And it's so funny how they've become this one conglomeration of family. I mean, I just love it. It's everybody's family has grown. So, I guess, nobody wants to cook. So if we'll host, then they'll come to us. Maybe that's what it is. So
we used to, my family and Tom's family lived just a few miles apart. So we used to go home to St. Pete every year for Thanksgiving, and our mothers had dueling Thanksgiving dinners. They insisted we have to cook our dinner. So we were with two little kids shuttling from house to house. And my late mother-in-law got so mad at my mother because we would get over to her house and we would be too full to eat anything. Yeah. If my mother said, we're eating at 4, Dot would say, well, we're eating at 3. But you never sat down to eat at 3. And so finally, one year, we just said, enough. We're going to rent. And this is what we did. We rented a house out at the beach, big enough for both families to come. Yep. And that did away with the dueling turkey days.
That's awesome.
So
That's a
funny.
smart idea.
That
I'm taking notes for
sounds
next
like-
year. Yeah.
It sounds like a really great short story, to be honest.
It would be,
Yes.
yeah.
That
It would
We
be.
used to have- we used to have these really killer games of Trivial Pursuit, and someone always left the table in a furor
Yep.
because they absolutely knew that the Trivial Pursuit answer was wrong
in the box.
in the
Hilarious.
box. Even though you would show it
hilarious.
to them. We showed it my brother and he'd go, I don't care. It's still wrong.
That's wrong.
So-
That sounds like
so I-
me.
Pre-internet. This was pre-internet, so you couldn't look it up and prove that he was wrong.
So I just have to mark this moment because Patty, just let's recap. You suggested a Thanksgiving short story.
Uh-huh.
Mary Kay glossed over it and moved on. And so next year I will be anticipating a Thanksgiving novella from you. Was this the moment?
About
that it
grilling
began?
dinners.
Uh-huh.
About grilling Thanksgiving dinners.
You know, I was actually, it's so funny when she said that. I was thinking the exact same thing, Kristen. I was like, this is
Like,
going to be a novel. Like
Feels
next year, we're
deja
going to have the
vu.
turkey
I feel
novel.
like this happened last year.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I said this to you guys earlier that I had this idea for a Christmas book and I've like totally forgotten it. I'm not writing another Christmas book, but I had this idea that I thought was like really great. And now I'm remembering that I got it last week on the show. So I'm gonna have to go back and
that's
watch
funny.
the
What
show
was it?
last week.
Funny.
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
I can't remember. So I'm gonna have to go watch the show from last week to see if it like jogs my memory. Cause it was
That's
something that like it was some story I was telling and I was like, oh, I should write a book about that.
I do have a turkey anecdote if you care to hear it.
We would like to.
Please.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
would, but real quick, Sean just asked if Butterball published turkey novellas.
Maybe.
Interesting.
Maybe.
You know, we should look into that. We really should.
Where they could package them in the turkey
Yes. Protected in plastic.
in
with
like the
gravy.
little waterproof bag instead of the gizzards. It could be
You talked about $1 million
Thanksgiving
idea.
novella. Okay, so years ago, I mean like 30 years ago, my-
Spatchcock series. That's awesome.
That's hilarious.
The spatchcock one only comes like in the adult novella, the adult turkeys.
So my mother and my brothers ran a family restaurant in downtown St. Pete. And so we would go down at Thanksgiving and we got pressed into service helping because they were open on Thanksgiving and a lot of elderly people would come for their, $7 Thanksgiving dinner. And so my mother she didn't know anything about running a restaurant, but she did it anyway. And so of course the day before Thanksgiving, she had all these big giant electric roasters that she was roasting turkeys in. We ran out. So she and I ran, I think, to Publix or someplace. And the restaurant we had like these green aprons and we literally had on like white shirts and green aprons. We ran to Publix and we're digging through the big things of turkeys and loading them into the shopping carts. And we're wearing these aprons and people are stopping us. They think we're the Butterball turkey people. And they're saying, hey, do you have to thaw that turkey? We're like, yes, you have to thaw a turkey. What's wrong with you?
It's hilarious. They thought you were the top
Because we
one
had
in
on
the
aprons.
crowd.
They just assumed that we knew what we were doing. What we didn't tell them that was we took it home and we thawed them in a giant bathtub of hot water and we kept changing the hot water.
Oh my gosh.
That is going to be the cutest short story. I can't wait to
We
read
can't
it.
wait to read it.
I can't wait for your
This
Thanksgiving
series
novella.
sounds foul.
I know our readers would gobble. Yeah, there we go. Somebody beat me
Oh,
to it.
this is amazing. I love it. We have the best readers in the world. Okay.
You
Well-
guys are the best.
I'm hungry now that we've been doing all this turkey talk.
Yep.
I don't know about y'all, but I think
Oh, that was a
it's time to
great
wrap
night,
it
you
up.
guys. I love
It was so
that.
fun.
Yes, yeah.
So
They
good.
were great.
It's always fun. And before we leave to see y'all next week, just a reminder that Butterball is celebrating the 40th anniversary of its Turkey Talk line, which
Amazing.
started as just a phone line. And now they have a website and a Facebook page, and they're on Instagram and TikTok. Y'all, I'm not on TikTok. I got to
I'm
get
not
with the
on TikTok.
program.
Me neither.
I might have to join TikTok because I just have this idea in my head of what the Butterball TikTok videos are like, and it's really amazing. So I think I need to see if I'm right. But you can call in with any of your turkey questions now through the end of December. So give them a call or check out their website. And if you and you can always Google it or go to butterball.com.
Or check
Right.
me at Publix. I'll be
I
hanging
was
out in the
just
green
gonna
apron.
Yeah, or hit your local Publix. Kathy will be the one in the apron giving out free turkey advice. But you get what you pay for.
Terrible
Tell
turkey.
you how to use the bathtub.
Horrible turkey advice. Don't take my turkey advice.
call the tip line. Exactly, the
Call the
talk
turkey
line.
talk
Yep.
line.
Oh my God, that is
Bye,
hilarious.
y'all.
All right.
Good night, y'all.
Good night, everybody.